Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon here joining you. We've got, it's a busy end to the spring. So joining me today, for the first time on the podcast, you saw him on night shift, Bryson Turner is with me today. What's up, Bryson?
Hey, Jeff. It's good to be on the podcast with you for the first time. This is actually my second podcast episode. I was on with Eric a few weeks ago.
That's right.
This is the first time I'm doing it with you, though.
First time we've been together on the podcast. So this has become our spring sort of wrap-up show, if you will. Eric is busy off doing the Women's College World Series. He's staying up all nights, odd hours, working, covering the softball beat. So it's going to be me and Bryson with you today. It's going to be a pretty short show compared to what we usually do, because we only have really two things we got to talk about, which is UCF baseball, obviously making their run to the American Championship, unfortunately losing to USF 8-7 in a real thriller of a game. Just barely coming up short in that game. And short of making a miracle run to the American Championship. And then, of course, we'll preview track and field in the NCAA East Regionals with two UCF Knights competing. And then from there, we'll pretty much be wrapping this thing up, Bryson, because it's a relatively short show. We're heading into the summer. Things are going to be a little bit leaner during this time. But there's going to be some news that we'll be talking about during the summer that we can riff about a little bit later. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. By the way, no podcast next week. We're going to take the week off. The following week, we're going to do our Black and Gold Banneret Award nominations, and then the week after that, we will actually pass out the awards once the fans have had the chance to get their voices heard on those nominations. So, but let's go ahead and get started with UCF baseball. What a run in the American Baseball Championship. Of course, they lose to USF 8-7, fell down 6-0 in the first two innings, but then fought back valiantly. 2 runs in the fifth, 4 runs in the sixth to get back in it. Top performances for UCF. Josh Crouch had a home run that kind of got things started. The big inning was the sixth for UCF, where Alex Freeland had a clutch double that got the Knights to within 2. Nick Romano got UCF to within 1. But the Knights in the last 2 innings, in the 8th and the 9th, had the tying run in scoring position and couldn't punch it across. Credit to the bullpen, who did a fine job, giving up only 2 runs after AJ Jones, just didn't have it in the first 2 innings. Zach Bennett actually had the most impressive performance on the hill. Through 3 perfect innings in relief, struck out 4. Boy, did he look good in those last 3 innings. And man, I'd like to see a little bit more of him on the hill. But the bottom line is UCF comes up short, and obviously no chance to make the NCAA tournament field as an at-large, because the Knights finished 31-30 overall in the season. But let's take a look at that season, because 31-30, 18-14 in conference. they scuffled and fought and scraped. They were so down below 500 in a really up and down season. I mentioned on Twitter, Bryson, that the game against USF was a microcosm of the season. It was up and down all year, fought through adversity. Obviously the two out of three at number one Ole Miss, and then right after that they lose 4 straight. To Stetson, and then 3 to Liberty. Then they win 4 out of 5, and then, or actually 6 out of 8, and then they go on a slide as they start conference play. It was just a wild up and down season, but we saw some development from some young players. They fought through the adversity of injuries to guys like Colton Gordon, who was their ace, Matt Archer, who had gotten off to such a great start with his bat. But then the team, pulled it together late in the season, won 5 of their last 6 in the regular season, and then won their first 2 in Clearwater before the doubleheader against ECU. And really, I think the best victory of the season was that game against ECU on Saturday, that second game, the 2-1 win. And it was almost that game against USF, but that 2-1 win. Where Alex Freeland, contributed both RBI for UCF with a homer in the second, and then the insurance run in the 9th, and David Litchfield was able to get a 3-inning save, and Hunter Pattison with just a magnificent outing, 6 innings, gave up only 3 hits, struck out 5, no runs given up. Let's listen to Greg Lovelady immediately following the game.
Losing in the championship always is difficult, but I'm really proud of the kids. Obviously we got down early. They did a good job of just making us pay for some mistakes, and got some big hits. And, but just like we've been all year, our dugout energy was great. Like, I never felt like we quit. Like, we could have laid down and just been done with it after the second inning, and we just fought like crazy. And unfortunately, we just ran out of time. We had a chance with the tying run at second base, but we had a lot of chances all game. We just couldn't capitalize. We left too many guys on base. We out hit them, but they just got the big hits, and we weren't able to come up with enough of them, and turn some of those 1-run innings into 3-run innings, and again we had a chance to second and third, nobody out when we scored 1 run. Just situations like that we just couldn't get it done. So proud of the bullpen. They did a great job, especially Zach Bennett and Nick Vieira, 2 freshmen coming in and pitching like they did. They were awesome, and hopefully the experience that we need, to do it again in the future. Obviously, Freeland had a great game and did some great things and big hits, and we just didn't have enough of them, and difficult. A lot of guys' last games here. Obviously Rathbone and Jones, and most likely Pena and Crouch, but they played their tails off. They never quit, and I'm really proud of them. We could have rolled over and died in March or April, and just more bad things kept happening, and even this week, and we just kept showing up. Jordan Rathbone, dislocates a pinky in April and breaks his thumb in May, and never misses a game and just continues to play through that stuff. Like, we did it all year. We just kept showing up to practice, and the players kept showing up and putting work in. And that's how you play your best baseball at the end of the year. We did that. You'd like to finish it off with the championship, but it just wasn't in the cards. And but a good life lesson for these kids to learn that even when things don't go your way, or you feel like the deck is stacked against you, you just show up every day. The sun keeps rising. You just keep putting in the work and just keep trying to make the most out of every day. And good things happen to people that do that. So hopefully this will be something that as they move on to the rest of their lives that they'll remember, and the guys that are coming back, just remember the struggles that we went through, remember the hardships, but also remember that when you put good work in, that good things can happen. And we learned how to win. We learned how to fight. We learned how to come back. We learned how to compete. Just took us longer than I wanted to, but we learned it, and hopefully that translates into going into next season and to the fall, and we continue to grow on that, and we're better for it next season.
What was the highlight for you? I think let's talk about Clearwater in particular. What was the highlight for you? You were covering every game very closely. What was the highlight for you for that week of 5 games where UCF came within 180 feet of possibly winning a conference championship?
I think really the big story for UCF is just the fact that we managed to put everything together. I think, like, even though we lost, the UCF did what you need to do in the postseason, which is be able to put everything together when you need it to, even if it didn't work as well before. For instance, Nick Romano, his tournament story, really amazes me, because he had, if I remember, 4 RBIs in the regular season. Once we got into the tournament, he ended up going off and getting just as many RBIs in the tournament as he has for the entire season before that. So to see him be able to finally find some success after having a really rough year after hurting his hamstring, that was definitely a major victory. And of course, great success coming to a great player at the right time. I think that's really something that defines this tournament. If I'm completely honest with you, Josh Crouch, he managed to hit multiple home runs in Baycare Park. That's something that Crouch has. Let's just say he hasn't had like the month-long like homer streak that Jordan Rathbone has had. So to see him go in that hot streak in Baycare Park that wasn't great. Alex Freeland, he's somebody that while I've been covering this team, he's been a great freshman, but obviously with everyone else doing their thing, he hasn't really done anything to stick out to me so far. This tournament, he did that. This Tom Jostin, that inside the park home run, amazing highlight. As far as pitching, Zach Bennett. I mean, like you said before, Zach Bennett really put on a show this tournament. Makes me very excited to see where he goes, whether he succeeds David Litchfield as the closer, which I could see him doing, or because of how long they could stretch him out to be a starter, which brings me to Ben Vespi. Ben Vespi did an amazing job on the mound this tournament as well, going long innings as well. Freshman Nick Vieira had a very solid tournament. It basically, I'm going through all of these players because a lot of them just were able to play their best baseball at the right time, and that's what led us to almost winning.
Yeah, and Jackson Clare too in that Memphis game. Boy, was he good.
Oh yes, for sure. I'll talk about this when we get into the championship game in USF, because I do want to talk about that specific game a little bit and what the Bulls did that managed to give them the victory. But Jackson Clare did a great job and really did a good job backing up Hunter Patterson after that game 1 start.
It was a little rocky after they, but there were a couple of, highlight moments. Obviously, the big 9-run inning against Cincinnati in the opener to get the 14-10 victory. It wasn't looking good, and then all of a sudden, like you said, you could see things kind of, show up all of a sudden for them, and they pulled it together at the right time. And the bats just got hot. I mean, 31 runs in those first 2 games, and you're thinking, man, is this going to continue? Then they run into East Carolina twice. And ECU, I mean, they were going to make the NCAA tournament anyway. And we knew that we were going to get their best shot on Saturday, and lo and behold, they took it. That said, I mean, it's not like UCF didn't, play poorly in that first game on Saturday. Kenny Serwa actually, even though he did kind of struggle. You mentioned Ben Vespi, who came in and threw 5 innings of relief and kept UCF in the game, struck out 6 over those 5 innings. That was key because the Knights did still have a chance in that game late, but the bats just couldn't get going against the ECU pitching staff. And it wasn't looking good until that second game when UCF managed to get that outstanding outing from Hunter Patterson, and then David Litchfield, and that was on short rest too. Hunter Patterson getting that done. I think that was probably the most impressive thing. Hey, look who's joined us. Who's taking a break from who's flown back supersonically from Oklahoma City here. Eric Lopez is with us here on the show to talk some UCF baseball. I didn't think you were joining us, dude. What's up?
Hey, Eric.
Oh, well, just dealing with other issues going on in softball, so just distracted me for a few minutes, but I'm here.
Softball Woj out here is breaking. What's happening now, Eric? Come on, spill the beans.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to get into some of the stuff, but let's just a lot of movement going on, and then also talking to my bosses in softball world about correcting some things they should have done. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
Softball Woj is at it again. My goodness. Anyway.
It's like the baseball season. Some ups and downs.
So let's get your mind off of softball because I know it's driving you crazy right now. Yeah. Bryson and I were talking about the highlight of the week for UCF baseball in Clearwater. What was the highlight for you following this 5-game run where UCF came, like I said earlier, 180 feet from possibly winning a conference championship?
Well, I think the positive is you make a run to a championship game for the first time for the program since 2002. This program hasn't played for a conference tournament title since the A-Sun days in 2002. And I think that's something to put in perspective, I think, for some of the audience here, because I feel like, to be honest,
some of you people weren't alive when that happened.
I was only 2 years old. Like what? Depending on what month it is, I was either 1 or 2 years old when that.
Oh my God, you're so young. Anyway.
I think it's important because I think some of the audience, the expectations, I think like UCF baseball is kind of like the Cleveland Browns in that they have we have a good fan base, tradition, but the expectations are like if we're the Pittsburgh Steelers when we're not. Like the Browns are not in the Steelers level. They never will be in the Steelers level.
I think that's a little harsh. I would say
it's 5-0 in Super Bowls. I mean, the point is.
I would Cleveland Browns, like they've never even been to the Super Bowl. I mean, UCF has won conferences before in the
Cleveland's played for conference title.
It's the A-Sun. It was a much different competition grading back. Right. I would say, they're more like the San Francisco 49ers. Would you say?
No, the Niners were the team of the 80s. I mean, I would say
Knights were the team of the 90s in the A-Sun.
Okay, that was the 90s. I mean, that's the point. This is the 2020s. Like, I think that's the thing. We think it's the 1990s, but it's not. I think we have this expectation that this team should be a tournament team every year. And the facts are they're not. They haven't been. Since 2004, they've only been to the tournament 3 times. So I think there's building blocks here. And I think the hope is that this tournament run is the beginning of a good, positive 2022. This year was, quite frankly, a year from, hell. I mean, nothing went right. Nothing went right. And in a lot of ways.
Well, a few things went right.
Like what?
I mean, Hunter Patterson.
He was terrible the first half of the year. That's
right, but he put it together at the right time.
Too late.
Alex Freeland.
It almost wasn't too late though. And then, hey, a couple other things, like we said, when they put it together, they were as good as anybody in the country. The 2 out of 3 against Ole Miss, for example.
But it wasn't enough times. That's the point. This season was up and down. Too many things went wrong. As soon as
I'm just saying, we've been through seasons from hell, and that this isn't what one was.
No, it was. I mean, considering the I get the expectations from the roster after 2020. I mean, think about it. This team was a top 25 team when 2020 ended, and unfortunately, that they couldn't carry that over to 2021 because of a lot of factors. This team had injuries to deal with. Colton Gordon's injury was huge. They lost Matt Archer to injury. Heck, even in the conference tournament, they lost Zach Hunsinger got hurt.
Let's not forget that whole pandemic thing that happened between the end of 2020 and
that screwed this baseball program. No UCF team was hurt more by the pandemic completely than the baseball program. because that killed their momentum, the 2020. And that's what I'm saying. This team was cursed, or however you want to use it. They just had bad luck. Even when they had short-term success, like the Ole Miss series, they couldn't follow it up the following weekend. There was always something that went wrong. And that, in a lot of ways, the championship game against South Florida was kind of the microcosm of that. They got off to a bad start, dug themselves a hole, came back, played pretty well in the middle of the game. You think they could pull it out, but they just couldn't. And that's kind of the way the 2021 season went. Hopefully, 2022, when that comes around, now there'll be a normal fall, normal spring, and hopefully this program can get some good luck, because they didn't get good luck in 2021 at all.
Let me ask you about those expectations too, just real quick, because I, like you, I don't think those expectations are fair. I think a lot of fans are comparing, the success of UCF baseball to the days of the A-Sun, when the fact is
right.
UCF basically dominated the A-Sun.
Correct.
It wasn't until later on that Stetson and FAU kind of came along and got good again. But those are Florida baseball teams, right? And you can play year round. You can play the best competition year round. The American, they were the big fish in the little pond. Now it's a lot different in terms of the competition gradient, like we were talking about. I don't think it's fair to expect, UCF to, or any team in the American for that matter, to compete year in and year and like utterly dominate the way that UCF is. And I know some fans are probably hearing this and say, hey, what about East Carolina? They're having a run right now, but how long is that going to last? Right. So what do you think about that? Is it, and Bryson, I want you to weigh in on this too after Eric. Do you think that it's fair for fans to say, well, we should be competing every year like this? This year was a failure. I'm not saying that. I haven't seen anyone say that the year was a failure, but I think their expectations are too high, because they don't understand the context of where UCF's program is right now in college baseball and how much talent is around them.
I agree, and I think you have to look at the last. I don't think Greg Lovelady's a good coach. He led Wright State to a regional final. He's not the problem. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe there's some things here that need better. They just upgraded the facilities, which is nice. That being said, I'm sorry. There's not to call it out, but there's a scoreboard there that's been there since, I think Ronald Reagan was president. So that's a kind of a
been there since, well, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's been there since we were students.
Well, that was what, George Bush
15 years ago.
Era. A lot of George Bush.
We're not that old, Eric.
I feel old.
The George W. Bush administration.
Right, but here's the point. The facilities are not up to par to Mark Light in Miami or Florida, who just built a new baseball stadium this year.
Right.
Heck, I would have taken their old stadium. I wish they would have just given us the old stadium that they had in McKeithen. Dick Kowser Stadium is one of the best baseball fields. I mean, you look at the facilities across the country, coastal area. This is not the hot spot, if you will. Doesn't mean you can't win. I think you can, but I think it takes time. And I think if and Bryson knows this, he's gotten to know Coach Lovelady. They're about development players. You have to develop players to be successful in college baseball. And that got hindered by the pandemic, because think about this. People forget this. There was no summer ball last year. There was no fall ball. That hurts baseball as a whole. And by the way, if you looked at the field of the NCAA tournament, like programs like Louisville is one of the top programs that usually makes the World Series. They didn't even make the tournament. So there's a lot of parity in the sport. There's not a big difference between Team 1 and Team 79 or 80 on the field. And so really a lot of times it comes to good fortune. And you look at what Greg has done since he's been here. He took a team that quite frankly had no business of winning an American Conference title, with all due respect to the players on that roster. That was not a talented roster. And they won a conference championship out of nowhere. They were picked near the bottom that year. 19, they were one of the first 4 teams out before making the field. They were literally a game or two out of making the field. I thought they should have made it in one of those 2 years.
Yeah, I will say in 17, I think that group was just starving for different leadership after being worn down by Terry Rooney for a long time. And that's not to disrespect Terry Rooney, but his coaching methods really wear down on guys, and you could tell they were just that was a talented team. He put together a talented team, but they were just not responding to him. And then when Greg came in 17, that fresh new perspective, really, it was very similar to O'Leary versus Frost. Very similar.
Interesting, yeah. Except O'Leary left Frost with more talent than Rooney did to Lovelady, and Lovelady still figured out a way to win. So it's pretty remarkable. But in baseball, remember, it takes a while to get your recruits in, and we were starting to see that, I think, last year. And last year, I think they were going to be a team that was going to contend for the conference championship, but unfortunately, it came to an end. And then this year, there's just a lot of things went wrong, and I think we have to keep that in mind when people want to say, "Well, the coach is the problem." We need to stop with that nonsense. We need to grow up. All right, just because you have, Jeff, whatever happened to the days? Remember, Bill Parcells had a few bad years, didn't he, with the Giants? Like he's a Hall.
He almost got fired. He almost got fired in '84. I think he took over in '81, and he almost got fired. The Scott Brunner year was pretty bad, and then he finally put it together. We just got word. Coach K is going to retire at the end of this upcoming season with Duke. More than likely, John Shire is going to take over for him. But people forget, Coach K's first few years at Duke, not great at all. And then it was
this past season wasn't very good either.
No.
He missed the tournament.
And then all of a sudden that Johnny Dawkins team, got hot and went on a run, and that's what saved Coach K's career.
Right. And Parcells missed the playoffs, I want to say, in 87 and 88.
They missed the playoffs in 87. They missed the playoffs in 88. This was right after that spectacular year in 86 where they were one of the greatest teams of all time. And then in 89, they get knocked out of the playoffs in their first game at home by the LA Rams.
Right. So and he's a Hall of Fame coach. And,
right.
I don't remember Giants fans calling for his head because of that. And I feel like, and this is not just a UCF.
Well, they probably were, to be fair. It was New York.
Were you? You weren't.
I didn't know football existed back then. Anyway.
Wow, you missed the good times at the Giants there. But anyway, so the point is,
I was like a toddler.
You have to put every year into context and what went wrong. There's a lot of things that went wrong. I don't care. Put any coach you want in that chair. They're going 31-30. In fact, they're probably going worse. I actually think I'm stunned that they even got to the championship game and went 31-30, because this was a season that I thought a million times was going to be headed dead south to go like 22-38 or something like that. And it didn't happen. And so hopefully they get back to the developmental deals there and get some good luck and get some health for 2022, and they can bounce back and have a good year. It's going to be an interesting offseason, though, because just in like every other college athletic sport right now, there's this transfer portal, and it's the wild, wild west. We got free agency, and Bryson, as you found out in that press conference, Greg, not the biggest fan of the transfer portal and how it's all set up, is he?
No, it's not. From what I understood, he does understand the value of, if you are in college and you see that you won't be able to get a chance to have playing time, then you can check elsewhere. But this wild west approach is something that he isn't exactly a fan of. So while he does understand why the transfer portal exists, that I think this whole wild west, the fact is, like you said, kind of it feels like a de facto free agency.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, let me ask you. I wanted to get in there and talk to you about that, because when we talked to Greg at the beginning of the season, he said that it's going to take a good, in his estimation, 5 years for college baseball to sort itself out post the big shakeup at the major league and at the professional level, majors and minors, the new agreement. It's going to take a while for that to filter down, plus the transfer portal, which, by the way, there was a lot of movement in baseball before, in college baseball before, unlike what you see at other places. It's really hard these days to develop a solid group that you can coach for 2 to 3 years together and really develop. And so you're kind of in this position where you have to see how much you can develop a guy in 1 year. And, for example, we actually just got word Nick Gatilla, left-handed pitcher, freshman from Davenport, Iowa this past year, just announced that he's in the transfer portal. I don't know who else is going to be in the transfer portal for UCF, but we'll probably find out in the coming weeks. Hopefully it's not many, but we don't know. Who knows how it's going to shake out. But Bryson, I wanted to
draft.
Yeah, plus the draft. We don't know what's going to happen with that. So, Bryson, as I look at this roster, let's see. Jordan Rathbone is probably not going to come back. You have a few guys who could come back, and there's really only one true senior in A.J. Jones. You got some redshirt juniors out there: Litchfield, Surwa, Billy McKay, Saltonstall, all those pitchers. Josh Crouch, we don't know what's going to happen, with him. Like, I don't know if he might try his hand as, in the pros after the year that he's had. And I've been really impressed with Josh Crouch this year. I think he would probably be like the team MVP if you ask me. But, what do you think this year? Because this is a young roster still. Do you think that we'll see some of these veterans come back, or do you expect to see a lot of movement a la what we've seen the last 2 years with UCF baseball?
I think it's really going to come down to the MLB draft. It's going to come down to that, because if we're just basing it off of who's leaving based off of seniors, because I want to look at senior night, because when senior night happened, they honored Joe Skinner, because this would have been his senior year. By the way, I have loved seeing the tradition they had this season where the player of the previous game, or Joe Skinner's 38. That's a really great tradition, and I'd love to see if they maybe keep that up or something. That was really cool. But besides honoring Skinner, they also honored Jordan Rathbone and AJ Jones. Sorry, both seniors that look like they're leaving. Like, the fact that they're honoring them makes me think they're leaving, Rathbone and Jones. However, they also were supposed to be honoring Kenny Surwa, because I was reading I read the preview before the series, and it said they were honoring Kenny Surwa, and then they ended up not doing that. And I was texting with the baseball SID, Colin Yeager, and I asked him about that. I was like, hey, did Surwa get honored? And he was like, oh, no, no, he actually got another year of eligibility after the preview had been written. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Surwa was supposed to be honored, and then they pulled it out after he got that extra year of eligibility, makes me think Surwa's coming back.
Yeah.
So,
but that shows you the kind of flux that we're dealing with here, doesn't it? Like,
oh yes, for sure.
We can't even keep. I mean, the guys who are on the inside can't even keep up with the movement. Anyway, so last thing that I wanted to talk about here, and you mentioned the loss to USF, and you wanted to talk a little bit about that, Bryson. When you look back at that game, I mean, I know I had mentioned it was a microcosm of the season. Really, I mean, it was fighting and scraping and clawing and just not enough, just barely not enough gas to get over the hill.
You can argue an arm short, like they've been all season. Either
an arm short or a hit short.
Yeah,
really, they were just one hit short. That's all they were. So, Bryson, when you look back at that championship game, covering it as closely as you did, what was the key takeaway?
I think that the key takeaway of this game was that USF had the arms to do it and we didn't. And this is what I mean. We have to really put into context, and Lovelady has talked about all season about how the starting pitching has just not been able to perform, which means more pressure's been able to put in the bullpen. All the credit in the world goes to Billy McKay, Nick Vieira, Zach Bennett, Ben Vespi, David Litchfield, all those relief pitchers that have been doing so great this season. But the problem is that the starters have more often than not put the relievers into a hole that they've had to defend. And so we wouldn't have had to make that comeback in the first place had AJ Jones not given up 1.2, giving up like 6 runs, 6 hits in just 1.2 innings pitched. Yeah. I mean, part of me is relieved that AJ Jones, is leaving after this season. He did a great job against Houston. This isn't anything against him. I'm sure he's a great pitcher, but this season just wasn't good for him and didn't really make a good impression on me. When I saw that AJ Jones was starting this series, or starting this game, I was nervous because Jones has just not really been there this season. And part of me goes back to ECU for a second, because if we had not lost game one, which I still don't blame UCF that we lost that game. You know, Cam Colmore, Carson Wisenhunt, ECU's a great team.
Yeah, that was ECU's pitching staff that won that game. You're right.
Right. Losing that game one was huge, because that means we had to use Hunter Patterson in game two. And because we used Hunter Patterson in game two, we didn't have AJ Jones was really the only starter that we had because Zach Hunsaker was hurt.
Exactly right.
Going into the championship game.
Yeah, because you imagine how different it would have been had they won the first game, and then Patterson would have had an extra day's rest going, and you would have gone, and you would have had your ace going, ostensibly your ace going in the championship game, a lefty. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Come to think of it, that was but Lovelady had to burn him because they had to win that second game. You're right.
I completely agree. And Hunter Patterson, amazing job in that second game. All the credit in the world.
Oh, is he good?
And I want to credit Hunter Patterson, by the way, because this season, like Eric said, so much went wrong this season. And even before Colton Gordon got hurt. And then Colton Gordon got hurt. Right. And the rotation had been such a crapshoot after Colton Gordon for the entire season, including Hunter Patterson, because Patterson, of course, had his struggles in the beginning of the year. So the fact that Patterson stepped in when he did to be the number one pitcher in the rotation and do as well as he did, absolutely, in my opinion, Hunter Patterson needs to really be credited for saving this season as much as he has. And so that game against ECU really makes me excited for what Hunter Patterson will be able to do in the future. But
if he comes back, because he is technically draft eligible, and that's the uncertainty here is we got to see who goes in the draft. Transfer portal, it's going to be wild. I mean, what was the number, Bryson? Like Greg said, there's over 900 or 1,000 names on the portal.
Over 1,000 names in the transfer portal.
Yeah, and it's the same way in softball. And the problem is in softball, in particular, and somewhat in baseball, is you're going to have a lot of mommies and daddies telling their kid, you're the greatest thing ever. It's the coach's fault. Let's go somewhere else, and where the greener, it's great. And then they go somewhere else, and it doesn't work out. So you're going to have a lot of players movement. Because of their mommy and daddy wants them to play because, they don't want to work hard for their job. Clowns.
Bryson, I think
Hunter Patterson is working hard. I mean, the Lovelady has talked about
his last 4 starts. He was great.
Oh,
he was
for sure.
Really great.
Absolutely great. I will say he did stumble a little bit in that Cincinnati game because
he did. That was the only bad start he had.
Right. But I will say that what Lovelady talked about how the moment kind of got to him in that first one, which I get it. He's a young guy. He's a freshman. I completely get that. The good thing is that the offense was able to support him in that game.
Yeah.
But ECU, that was all Hunter. That was mostly Hunter in that game. Especially since we won 2-1. It was a pitcher's duel, that kind of thing. Alex Freeland was really the only person that was able to back him up in that game, and so that
they squeezed every last bit that they could out of David Litchfield in those last 3 innings too. Yeah. That was
Litchfield too. And I don't know if he's a redshirt junior. If he comes back, then that's good. Certainly would be great. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see Zach Bennett step up and take that closer spot because of his performances in this tournament, which he did in the USF game. Like you said, he went 3 innings, didn't allow 0 hits, 4 strikeouts.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is just kind of the background because all that is the backdrop coming into the USF game. And going into the USF game, in my opinion, the difference in that game, like I said, I talked about AJ Jones, and now I want to mention to contrast that with USF because if there is one big difference between USF and UCF, Eric, you know what I'm about to talk about here, pitching depth. I said this in Night Shift earlier this week before the tournament. Eric was there. He can vouch for me on this. I said this, that USF's starting pitching depth was going to be the reason why they were my sleeper pick to make a deep run in this tournament. And that the only reason why they weren't my favorite and they were just a dark horse was because their offense had been iffy this season. And I said that if their offense was able to get going in this tournament, then they were a very formidable team. Lo and behold, look what happened. their offense got going. The USF batters did step up, but what they've had all along was that pitching depth. I want to consult the.
Well, again, UCF had injuries to their pitching staff. So if UCF had a healthy pitching staff,
right.
I think we have a different story there. But that's the problem that goes back to.
And even so, UCF was one run away.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. But again, though, USF still managed to pull that out, and that came from their pitching. I'm looking at the overall stats for individual pitchers in the American Athletic Conference right now. Four USF pitchers in the top 11. You have Jack Josiah, Dylan Burns, Colin Sullivan, and Brad Lord. Now I will say USF did have me USF did almost get out at the end when they lost to Tulane that first time. And when I saw that they started Brad Lord, which Brad Lord is the number 4 of those 4 USF starters, I knew that, USF was taking I felt like USF was taking a bit of a risk starting Brad Lord in that game in that game against Tulane, the second one, because, Brad Lord had as of now, he has a 4.69 ERA. So obviously he has an ERA that, isn't the best among USF's pitching arms. But yet they came through and won that game. So that means that Colin Sullivan was able to come in and start this for USF. And he came in, allowed one run on 6 hits. Great job out of them. But again, when you look at USF's pitching squad, you have Josiah, Burns, Sullivan, and Lord all in the top 11. You look at UCF, all you have, Jack Sinclair is ranked number 12. Hunter Patterson hasn't really been back in the starting rotation that long to be ranked up there, but I would obviously you can definitely argue he's our number 1. There's no arguing he's our number 1. But then you have Kenny Sturwa and AJ Jones, who have both been very iffy over the course of this season. And so in my opinion, that's what it really came down to as far as this entire tournament. You have USF, who have these 4 really solid, really good starting pitchers. They don't have that Gavin Williams, Garrett Shanley, that kind of stuff. They don't have the one guy. They have multiple guys.
Right, and it benefits you in a double elimination format. That's why the double elimination format is flawed. Which, by the way, you have a double elimination format, but yet in the biggest game of the tournament, it's single game. Make up your mind. What do you guys want to do?
No, it's the perfect format, Eric.
No, it's awful. Awful.
No,
awful.
It's not. You have two.
Atrocious.
Basically, you have two double elimination brackets.
Yeah.
And then they do the thing that you like, which is they cater to television. They say when it comes to the end.
By the way, can we improve?
We're going to have one winner take all game at the end for TV.
By the way, for TV, can we improve that? Can we do better than ESPN News? If we're going to do that, let's just improve ESPN News. The championship game should not just be on ESPN News. We could do better than that. And look, South Florida was lucky. Let's be real, and they're going to get their reward, which is an ass kicking by Florida and Miami in the Gainesville Regional. So that's enough South Florida talk for this program. All right.
All right. Well, for UCF. 31-30 on the regular season. We head into the off season. Who knows what we're going to see here in the coming weeks and months, but we'll be keeping a track of it. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little track and field and just kind of wrap up this wild spring real quick here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. It's Jeff, Eric, and Bryson with you here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, welcome back to the show. Jeff, Eric, and Bryson with you as we wrap up. This is basically almost it. There's one UCF sport that is actually still ongoing as of our recording this. It's track and field, actually. 2 UCF Knights are in the national finals out in Eugene, Oregon. Ashira Collins in the triple jump qualified with a jump in the East Regionals in Jacksonville with a jump of 43 feet 1.5 inches. That sets a new freshman record for UCF. So she's going to the NCAA championships. First Knight to qualify in the triple jump for the NCAA since Dion Thomas back in 2009. And then, of course, there's Renaya Jones, who we know has just been a revelation this year in track and field. She qualified in her main event, which is the 100-meter hurdles, 5th overall in Jacksonville at 12.89. Not her personal best, but that shows you actually how good her personal best was. And that was good enough to get her to the semis in Eugene. And is the first Knight since Jackie Coward, who was our very first interviewee on this podcast. First UCF Knight since Jackie to advance the NCAA championships in the 100 hurdles. So there's your two UCF qualifiers for Oregon, Renaya and Ashira Collins for the NCAA Division I championships. I'll tell you guys, there's some stiff competition in the East region. There's two regionals. There's the East and the West. And the East was the one that was hosted by UNF in Jacksonville. And you got some stiff competition out there because it's all the Southern track and field powers that are out there. Your SECs, your ACCs, they're all out there. So this is a pretty impressive showing by the two of them in this event, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's very impressive, and we'll see how they fare. I mean, obviously, it's going to be Eugene. It's a big stage. That'll be exciting. It'll be good exposure. And boy, Renaya Jones has been the story of this spring. I mean, she's taken it by storm. And we had Dana Boone on last week on the podcast and talked about this. I mean, this is a young roster, but it's got a bright future with, I think, a lot of potential star athletes. Kind of back to the Jackie Cowards and the Freemans and Ariel Scotts of the early 2010s and 2013 range. I think we could be headed to that direction. They probably are a little bit ahead of schedule, but when you have a freshman phenom like a Renaya Jones kind of leading the way among others, I'm excited to see how this is, how they fare. And it's good to see track and field, in Eugene, Oregon, kind of be the official end of a season like normal in the past.
Yeah. The schedule for Eugene, the 100 hurdles semis are at 4:30 a week from today. We're recording this on Thursday, June 3rd in the morning. 100 hurdles are at 4:30 on Thursday, June 10th. That's the semifinals. And then the finals would be just before, about 3:45, and that's local time, on Saturday, June the 12th. Triple jump final for the women, which Sherry Collins is going to be in, is about 3:20 p.m. on Saturday, June 12th. So it's going to be, listen, the busier UCF is in the NCAA track and field championships, the better. I love seeing this. Bryson, let me ask you about Renaya, because you were following things pretty closely and you were enthusiastic to us about seeing, her qualify. What a star she's become. And I don't want to, gloss over what Ashira Collins did also in the triple jump, because I think that she was kind of a surprise a little bit, but she qualified too with a really clutch jump on her last jump, set a personal best. It was do or die for her, and she made it.
Yes, indeed. I'm looking at in the women's triple jump first round. I'm looking at her thing right now. I believe it says she qualified 11th. She qualified 11th out of 12. Like the top 12 jumps were moved on, and she got in at 11th place. It was her personal best too, which definitely a clutch performance out of her. The fact that she's a freshman. We talked about Renaya Jones and how a redshirt freshman, and she's able to do all this. And I'll talk about her in a second. But yeah, with Collins, she's a freshman just like Renaya, and she's managed to make it to the championships in her first year as a freshman. Did so in a clutch way. Very proud to see Ashira there, and I'm excited to see what she can do. But of course, a lot of the eyes are going to be on Renaya Jones, who had managed to qualify for her 100 meter hurdles. And I think that it is a stiff competition. You talk about the SEC schools. We also have North Carolina A&T, whose track department had a really good showing in the East. But I think that a big thing to watch at her is going to be, can she replicate the time that she had in the American Championships? Because we know that she can do it. She did it.
Yep.
So, and it'll be interesting to see if she's able to do that. And then of course, moving forward, once we go through the championships, and that's something that I watch being a fan of the Olympics, is to see if she will decide to compete in the U.S. Olympic trials, which take place a little bit after the championships. Because
in the same place, by the way, at Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon, which is really the home of U.S. track and field. The Olympic trials are right after, like you said, June 18th through the 27th. So it's a busy couple weeks in Eugene between the NCAAs and the Olympic trials, huh?
Yes, indeed. I'm excited to see if Renaya elects to do it or not. I personally hope she does, because I would love to see a UCF Knight in the Olympic trials. Maybe be able to compete in Tokyo. That'd certainly be a very fun thing to cover in the summer. So considering sports is going to be leaner, and so not only be covering the news revolving the transfer portal in different sports, it'd be great to cover a night in the Olympics if indeed things go right. But obviously that's still pretty far off. I just figured I'd mention that so that way we are poised to see it happen if it does happen. But as far as the championships go, I'm excited to see what Renaya will do, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if they're gonna televise this anywhere. I don't see anything in particular. Eric, do you see?
Usually, ESPN, sometimes they'll put it on either one of their ESPN networks.
But I think the semis might be a little bit different. Usually, they show the finals of all these events, right? So I'm trying to see if we're going to see the NCAA track and field competitions on TV, even if they're streaming it. I think that would be. I would hope that they would stream it. It's the Nationals, for crying out loud. If they do, we will update you. Follow our Twitter account, UCF_Banneret, for the latest on that. All right. So as we wrap this up, and just real quick, we're going to do a lot more wrap-up stuff here in the next couple weeks. By the way, we're going to take, again, just as a reminder, we're going to take next week of the show off because, we have lives and we want to take a little bit of a break. And then we will return the following week with our Banneret Awards nomination show, and we're going to take some time to kind of recap the year there as well. Hopefully, we'll have a full house for that show as well.
Hopefully, we'll have good news from track and field as well, because
that's also our hope, because that might be one of our events of the year. Who knows? But then we'll have the Black and Gold Banneret Awards the week after that, because we're going to give you, the fans, a chance to vote on that, and you'll have a vote and a say in who wins the awards. But as we wrap up this spring season, the busiest spring season in UCF sports history, fellas, it's Eric. Well, Bryson, let me start with you. I know obviously you were a latecomer, but you have followed UCF sports very closely ever since you became a student. You knew latecomer to us, but what was the highlight of the spring for you this year?
Honestly, I think a big highlight for me was just seeing UCF baseball come through as much as it has. I mean, look, 2020, early 2021, just a tough year for not just UCF, but this entire country. And to see a team like UCF baseball come through as much as it has, to have the setbacks that it had, and still manage to see the success and potential that it still has, is very inspiring for me, and I still feel very optimistic about that. If I did have to say, if there's one big highlight though, because baseball is just something that I like talking about, but if there's one thing that I'd say would be kind of the story of the spring, I guess, is the rise of Renaya Jones, because seeing her in the American Championship and seeing her qualify for the Olympic trials, I think we are seeing the beginning of I don't know what's the word, I guess all-time UCF track and field athlete, to see this woman as a freshman make a time that qualifies her for the US Olympic trials as a freshman is amazing to me. And if she can do that as a freshman, then I am excited to see what she'll be able to do in the years to come. So the rise of Renaya Jones, I think, might be the big story of the spring, but I wouldn't discount baseball and the trials and tribulations that they've had to go through this entire spring.
Eric, how about you?
We had 7 teams play for an American Conference Championship game in spring alone, starting with women's basketball. You had softball, baseball, men's soccer, volleyball, women's and men's tennis. Won 4 of them. You had women's golf make the tournament as well. Rowing would have made the tournament if they didn't get shafted by some shady, Ivy League nonsense in rowing where you put a waiver in to qualify for the tournament. I thought the Ivy League decided to take the year off. Like, get out of here. Nonsense there. But, you had Gabe DeCamps going to the quarterfinals. Deepest penetration for any men's tennis player or any tennis player in the history of UCF. So, pretty wild spring. One that we'll hopefully never have to go through again. At least the next time it does. Next time we have a pandemic, we'll all be dead. So,
oh my God.
Well, I mean, if the next one probably be in 100 years. If we're still alive, that's some interesting magical science we pulled off.
I get what you're saying now.
Oh, okay. I was thinking softball's been really getting to him.
Man.
Oh my God. So no, it's been an exciting spring. Pretty successful considering all the climate. Really, when you think about it, they had to deal with a lot of stuff off the field, and to accomplish the success on the field most of the teams did was pretty impressive. So I look forward to the Bannies in a couple weeks. That'll be exciting. And, and then after that, before you know it, I know people get ready for football. We had the football kickoff times announced recently with, as I predicted, for weeks, very predictable, Boise State, Thursday night game.
Thursday night, yep.
You're welcome. As well as the Navy game was kicked off. So really, one of the rare times as a UCF fan, you've got the first month of the football schedule pretty much figured out. So you can start making plans for that. That'll be exciting as well under the Gus Malzahn era, which I think we'll talk about as we get into the fall, closer to the fall. I think this will be the most watched UCF football season of all time nationally. That's my bold prediction there.
That's a pretty bold prediction, but I don't know. That might not be as bold as you think because people are interested in Gus Malzahn. They're going to see what this is all about. He's the straw that stirs that drink.
He is the biggest star UCF's ever had in that program. With all due respect to all the players, and I'm telling you, there are people in Birmingham and other SEC markets, quote unquote, that will watch UCF football that don't watch UCF football on a regular basis. And I think that it's been pretty remarkable to see the reaction nationally to the point where I think there's UCF guys. We're no longer the heels of football anymore. We got people that are going to be rooting for UCF.
Yeah. Well, I think that also has to do with the change in athletic department direction as well, because you could argue that turn to the heel had a bit to do with Danny White's and how he ran things. And I mean, I think that if Danny White was sort of like UCF kind of getting itself on the map, being a young upstart heel kind of thing, Terry Mohajir is going to be the era of where UCF athletics is able to mature a little bit and be able to now gain the respect of a lot of people more.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, by the way. We talk about all the sports going on in the spring, but all the movement going on in the midst with Danny White leaving, Terry Mohajir coming in,
in the middle of a pandemic,
Josh Heupel leaving, and Gus Malzahn taking over. It's been a pretty wild spring. I mean, if anybody wants to do a documentary about it, Netflix about it, they could do it.
Well, my highlights are seeing volleyball win another conference championship and fight and scrape the way that they did. In some of those tougher matches where they were playing teams a third time, that was amazing. Tennis, just an outstanding job by both squads. Men's soccer, wow, finally breaking through, beating SMU in PKs, beating Tulsa, and winning that conference championship at home at long last. So happy for Scott Calabrese and his team. 4 conference championships in the spring, doggone close to 7. You got to be, and actually doggone close to 8, to be honest with you. Just announce. I think there's no way you can say that this spring was anything other than a success for UCF. And my big shout out goes to all the folks behind the scenes at UCF who made this spring happen. It was an incredibly heavy lift doing 2 semesters of sports in one, basically, with soccer and volleyball being moved to the spring. The facility staff, the communication staff, the marketing staff, everybody, the coaches, and obviously the players, the support staff who you don't see, directors of operations and team managers and things like that, who had it really was. And I said this, I had a Twitter thread a few days ago about this because I really was, I was kind of emotional at the end of UCF baseball's, the regular season, that last home event. It was like, wow, all of a sudden it's over. In terms of home events, it was. And, it really was a miracle that we had any sports at all this year at UCF. And that they were able, not just UCF, but every school in the country was able to pull it off. Is something that we should, really stand back and give a standing ode to, because the coaches, the players, the staff, everyone deserves it for, doing what they did in the middle of, a pandemic and tremendous adversity. And, and really they and what you don't see is, what a lot of people had to deal with, not seeing family for a long time, not seeing your support system for a long time, in many cases practicing in very physically distanced fashions, which is, which really cuts down on the amount of, bonding time. I think the coaches really talked to us a lot about that too, guys, right? Was like, you didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of those team activities together, that help form the chemistry that you're looking for in the course of a season. So despite all that, for UCF to have as much success on the field and off the field academically as they did, is just a miracle. A real miracle. And, we obviously are thankful that they allow us to follow along with it all, because it's, because it was quite the year. And, here's to a good summer, and hopefully we don't have to deal with this compressed schedule again. Because, man, that was wild, but it wasn't nearly as wild for us as it was for the people inside the building. And we were glad that we were able to provide them some credit to what they were able to do. So, all right, fellas. Well, what do you say we wrap this up? Make sure you follow us on Twitter, UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black Gold Banneret. Follow us each individually. I'm at Jeff_Sharon. Eric is at Eric Lopez Elo. Bryson is at It's Bryson Turner, ITS Bryson BRYSON Turner on Twitter. And make sure you subscribe to our podcast if you don't already. Via Apple Podcasts if you're an iOS user. If you're an Android user, you can subscribe to us on Spotify. If you already subscribe to us, make sure you leave us a rating and a comment. We really appreciate it. And also share this podcast with some of your UCF friends. Tell them about us and make sure that and ask them to subscribe to us too. It really does help us out and helps UCF out in terms of a little bit more attention for a program that we all know and love here here at UCF. So for Bryson Turner and Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to take next week off. We'll be back middle of June. Talk about the Black Gold Banneret Awards when we return. This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.